All right. Let's double check. I think we are good to go here. All right. Welcome, everyone. I believe this is episode 7 already of the Spiritual View. Holy cow, how time flies, hey? And I am here with my beautiful co-host, Sheila Shorten. And today we are here and we're going to be having a conversation about manifestation. And so if you're watching us live, I'm going to just pull this up really quick here so that I can check out the comments as well and just actually make sure that we are live. Yep, there we go. Perfect. So we thought we'd have a beautiful conversation about manifestation today. And so that is where we're going. But before we start, let's just check in. How are you doing, Sheila?
I'm doing great. I had a fantastic weekend, taught some yoga. Yoga is my weekend kind of work. And just had a really great, wonderful weekend. So I can't complain. Feeling good.
Awesome. That's awesome. And it's interesting right now, like, because Sheila and I live in the same place. You can see like I've got some sunlight coming in my window here because I'm in my office today because it's spring break. So the kids are home. So I'm kind of reclused into my office, but it's not that remote, unfortunately. But it is what it is. And Kim was supposed to join us, but Kim actually spent the day in Thailand snorkeling, and I think she's had a little too much sun. So maybe she'll pop in here, maybe she won't. I'm not too sure, but we're going to get started because we're here. So let's start when we talk about manifestation. Sheila, I would love to hear your point of view on what manifestation is to you.
So I believe that we have the power to create our lives. We have the power to set ourselves up for success and set ourselves up for what we desire. But if we have any kind of programs running in the background that suggest differently, manifestation can be completely opposite of what we desire, because we can start manifesting what we see of ourselves. Case in point, me losing everything. Having a moment of having lost my business, lost my home, all these things that left my life. It didn't happen to me to make me suffer. It happened to me to make me wake up and realize where my true thoughts were. And obviously I had these thoughts that said I didn't deserve anything. I had no value. And if I don't, Tracy and I were talking about this before, if I don't dissect those points of views and those understandings of self, it doesn't matter what I want, what I think I want. Oh, I want $1 million. I want a nice business. I want a new home. It doesn't matter what I think that I want to manifest. This is my personal opinion. I don't believe anything can happen until we clean up in the background what's going on. And I think I'm a work in progress. I'm cleaning it up all the time. I thought I was over my self-worth. And then suddenly I'm in Vancouver and I discover a situation where I feel like I have no worth. So I have to keep revisiting that and keep going there, not because it's comfortable, but it's really uncomfortable to admit to yourself that you don't have value, or you don't feel like you have value, because it's not true. That's not true that I have no value, but it's really uncomfortable to face that. And where does that come from? And how do I deal with that? So I understand why people don't want to go there and they want to leave these old programs running in the background, because that is much more comfortable than bringing it forward. But I always say it's actually less comfortable. It's the opposite of what we think. We think, okay, don't touch there, don't go there, don't want to do that. But really the truth is, once you touch that and go there, you get a chance to release it. You get a chance to move forward with it. So yeah, manifestation to me is real. You can really manifest things in your life, but you need to take a look at what is the programming that is happening for you to create what you want forward.
Yeah, I love that. And I share the same viewpoint. Like when we talk about manifestation, a lot of times what comes up is the universal laws and the law of attraction, right? And so the law of attraction, if you're not familiar with it, if you're watching, is basically the idea that like attracts like. So whatever vibrational state we are in is what we are going to attract to us. And I too, just like you, believe that we are always creating, which if we're always creating, then we are always manifesting, and we can do that intentionally. But if we're not doing it intentionally, it's still happening. It just means that we're doing it by default. It was so interesting. I had someone say to me not too long ago something, I was talking about, being a creator and being intentional and what is it that you want. And the comment that they said back to me was something like, I just go with the flow and let the universe give me whatever. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting point of view, right? Because to me, I mean, there's an element of surrender there for sure that we've talked about in the past, can be really hard to kind of to allow, I suppose, right? Which is why another universal law is allowing, right? There's more components to it than just the idea of like attracts like, right? But at the same time, I was like, well, what would it be like though if you never ever put any intention into what it is that you want? If we're always creating by default, does that give us more of what we want, or is intention and being purposeful behind what we want going to create more of a life that we want? Right. So there's kind of like, there's two sides to the coin there. But one of the things that I remember I experienced the most when I started to learn about manifestation over a year ago is I started with Abraham Hicks and, The Secret and all those type of texts. And there was always a disconnect for me because there was a part of me, like, so for example, one of the messages that how I received it was the interpretation was, if you want to create something, you just need to be in the highest vibrational state. And if we look at like the frequencies of emotions, one of the highest vibrational states is joy, right? And love. And I was always just kind of sat there and I was like, it doesn't feel right to me because maybe it's just me, but I can't be fucking joyful. Happen, like sometimes shit happens. Sometimes someone cuts you off, or sometimes, you have an argument with someone or whatever that looks like. And so I was like, okay, so if those things happen, it's taking me out of a state of joy. So then it was like, I almost felt defeated. It was like I was already beaten before I'd even started. And I was like, I don't get how people do this, or is it just not for me? And that was kind of a story I carried for quite a long time. And even after, like I did do, I have a coaching certification in the universal laws, which I finished at the beginning of COVID. And that brought a lot more information through for me. And I was able to bring forward processes that I could use with my clients and things to help them to shift their own, emotional and vibrational state. But there still was that element missing. They never wanted to talk about the aspect of the subconscious, right? This idea that no matter how much I focus on saying, okay, I am feeling joyful, or I'm feeling playful, or I'm creating this thing, if my subconscious mind in the back is saying, well, you can't have that, or that's not possible, or you don't deserve that, then now there's this disconnect, right? Because how I see it is kind of like the subconscious mind. So when we are intentional, we create with the conscious mind. The subconscious mind is kind of like the gateway that those thoughts have to go through to then get out into the universe to connect. So if they're sitting on two opposite sides of the spectrum, then everything kind of comes out sideways in a way. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense, because even Esther, who channels Abraham, the law of attraction, she talks about that, the two sides of the train. You've got one engine on one side of the train and one engine on the other. Okay. And how are you going to get anywhere when you have the thought that I don't deserve and you have the thought that I want? Yeah. It's equal energy moving in opposite directions. There's no movement, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that makes total sense for sure.
Yeah. And so I feel like that's definitely like one of the myths that, I'd love to, I guess we're debunking right now, right? Or that we're just sharing with the listeners in the perspective of, all of the intention and the positive affirmations, isn't going to give you the effect that you want if you're not doing the work behind the scenes, right? If you're not doing the reprogramming and the clearing, or however you choose to do that in whatever way, right?
The only thing for me that I find works is really to face it. To face anything that's not happening in my life. And gosh, I've got a lot to face, and so I'm a huge work in progress, and I'm continuously facing something and allowing the next thing to come up and the next thing. And the best way I can describe this is in my dating life. So I had been single for probably 6 or 7 years. And of course I was on the dating sites and meeting this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy. And each one that showed up in my life, I really recognized that they showed up for a reason. So the first person that shows up shows me this is happening. So I go and I figure that out. The next person comes in and shows me the next thing, and so on and so forth. I had a lot of people show up that wasn't comfortable. It was really uncomfortable situations. And my friends would even comment like, why would you put yourself through that? Like, why would you continue this process? And because for me, what really mattered was not each one of those situations. What mattered was what I desired.
Mm.
And I desired a situation where I was in a partnership of connection and love and a true connection, something that was, where I was vulnerable and it was intimate and it had all the desires that I wanted. So I had to go through each one of those situations. Each one of those men that showed up showed me, okay, yeah, this is still happening for you. Let's go there and see why.
Yeah.
So was it painful? Gosh, yes. But was it rewarding? Yes. In the end, it took me to where I wanted to go. It took me to the place where I saw my value, that I was a valuable partner, and therefore I could attract in a valuable partner. But it doesn't just come from me saying I'm valuable. I can say that and I can, and even, talk about that. But unless that is really my mantra, or that is really my energy that what I'm putting forward, I'm going to continue to attract in the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I feel like words are so powerful, right? Because anytime, whether it's in thought inside our heads, or whether we're speaking it out loud, or whether we're writing it through our hand, the words that we use also hold a specific vibration, right? And sometimes we don't realize that, even though when we sit down for, let's say, our 10 minutes of intentional practice of whatever that looks like, when we step outside of that and we start to speak to people, sometimes we're almost like destroying and creating what we've intended at the beginning of our day, right? Like even words like I am versus I'm trying.
Yeah.
Right. Or I can versus I can't, or I wish, or I would like, right? Like sometimes one of the most powerful things that we can do is just decide. Right. And so looking like that was another, there's another tip, I guess, that kind of flowed out just in this, the idea of really looking at how we're speaking and how we're thinking about things, because anytime we have a sense of ambiguity, we could say, right, or we have a sense of self-doubt, or we're like, oh, I'm not sure, or is that really possible? Like if we don't believe it, and if we can't choose it or decide for it, then we're also creating that disconnect once again, right? So it's coming back to that process of thought and how we use our language to support us.
Everything matters. The energy of all of us matters. What we put out into the world, our thoughts, our words, our intentions, all of it matters. What matters to me, and I believe that as humans, and this is just my belief system, and this is just how I've seen the world through my eyes and my perception, is that we're here on this planet for one reason, and that is for the reason to find our value, to know our value, and to have joy in that, and to experience the world from that perspective. When we experience the world from the perspective that someone is doing something to me, or life is bad, my boss is mean, my job is awful, when we experience life through that lens, what's that suggesting is that there is something inside of you that believes that you are not worthy of having a good boss. You're not worthy of having a good connection with your boss. So you can continue to create that negative connection. And you can quit that job, but you'll still find that boss at the next job or the next job. So there is everything around us shows us what is happening in our life. When I lost everything, it showed me that there was this little girl that still believed she was not worthwhile. There was this person that still believed that she had no value to this planet. And it was in a big way that it showed me that. Now, I'm not saying that I've got there because we talked about that already, but I am climbing out of that hole. I'm climbing out of that perspective. And I believe one day that I will be clear of it, because I don't believe we're meant to have that perspective.
Yeah.
I truly have that understanding that we're not meant to. So I'm going to work through each and every pothole that comes my way, and I'm going to look at it and how painful it is, how difficult it is. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go there.
Mm-hmm. And like, I don't want to assume for you, but you can let me know, like that would be an experience where you can look back now and see the lessons, but perhaps wishing that maybe you had created the experience in a different way that didn't look like losing everything.
Oh my goodness, yes. because you don't have to. Like, I mean, the universe gives you up, like, here, we're showing up here, we're showing you here, we're showing you here. You're not valuable. You're thinking you're not valuable. They're going to continue to show me. And like, I don't have to let it go to the final straw, to the big bang. My friends would say, oh gosh, like I had such freedom after it all happened. I had such freedom and such peace of mind and such understanding of the world and such a goodness that came out of it. And my friends would say, do I need to lose everything to have that feeling? I'm like, are you crazy? Of course not. Do not have to have the most difficult thing happen to you to wake up. I mean, the only reason I had to have that is because I was not facing it.
Yeah.
I would prefer to hide in the sand than to face it.
Yeah. And that's so fascinating because I had a similar experience back when I was a teacher. And after, I know we talked in a previous episode about how I did the mindfulness teacher and coach position for a few years. But then when I went back to the regular classroom, I did not want to be in the regular classroom anymore. Like there was such a contrast, which is something we also talk about in the law of attraction, right? Between having this experience of loving my job and doing exactly what I wanted to do and feeling really in purpose, to then going back to the classroom and feeling like I was, inundated with paperwork, and it just didn't hold the meaning that the other position held for me. So the last couple of years that I was teaching, I just wanted out. That was the truth. I just wanted out. But I was stuck in the fear of, I can't leave until I completely replace this. So I need to find something that's going to give me the same income, that's going to give me the same stability, that's going to give me the same security so that I can walk away. Right. And so behind the scenes, I was like building my massage practice and doing yoga and things like that. But every day I would go to work and it was like, I was like, do you remember the Care Bears?
I don't Care Bears, but
the Care Bears was like this cartoon when I was a kid, and there was all these bears and they all had different names. And his name was Grumpy Bear, and he was a gray bear, and he always walked around. There was this little cloud around the top of his head that would like rain down, and it just followed him everywhere he went. And that's how I felt. I felt like I had this dark cloud above my head all the time. And every day I would go to work. And I remember just thinking to myself, every day I walk through that door, I'd be like, I don't want to be here. Right. And I remember that vibration and the havoc it wreaked on my system and my mental. And it wasn't fair to me. It wasn't fair to the kids that I was teaching, like it wasn't fair anywhere, but I didn't see a way out. And it's not that there wasn't one. It was that I wasn't allowing myself to see any of the possibilities because I was stuck in this. It has to look just this way. If I'm going to leave, it has to be A. There's no way it could be B, C, D, E, or any of those other things. Right. And I went through that for a couple of years, and it was fucking miserable. It was miserable for my family. It was miserable for me. It was just, it was terrible. And from a vibrational perspective, I probably couldn't have got any lower because I was always grumpy. I was always in the depths of despair. I was always negative. I was always complaining. I was always doing all of those things. And so a couple of years later, what happened in the school division I worked with is a new school opened. And so they redid boundaries and population shifted. And from there, now we had a surplus of teachers in our school. Because we had a surplus, and I had a full-time contract, but my hours weren't full-time. And the division was trying to get rid of any part-time employees. So because of that, I got surplused, which then I was even more pissed, because then I went into nobody recognizes anything I do and acknowledges me, and now I'm just a number, and everything was happening to me. And from there, then I got placed in a school that was an extra 45 minutes away from where I was already working, which was half an hour away, which now meant I would have been required to drive an hour and a half one way to teach for half a day and then drive an hour and a half back, which then meant that in order to get to work on time, I would have had to drop my kids off at the daycare at 6 a.m. instead of 7:30. And I was angry. Oh boy, was I angry. And I was like, there's no way I'm doing this. I'm just not. I flat out refused. And I flat out refused and tried to negotiate and ended up just taking a leave of absence because they weren't going to give me what I wanted. Right. But looking back, I can see how that was just like a huge It was like the picture I always see is like the universe just like kicking me right in the ass off the cliff. It's like, well, you've been fucking asking for it, but you haven't done anything. So here you go. Right. And here's the push. And so it's interesting how sometimes we can want something so bad. But I also believe if we're not clear on what it is we want, if we just look at the end result, but we don't take any time to think about how it could possibly happen or what the possibilities are, somewhere along the line, it's like the wires get crossed, like when you play that game of telephone, right? And you get a version of what you wanted, but it didn't come to you the way that it wanted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really a cool story because you were like putting it out there. Then they gave it to you.
Yep.
In the vibration of where you were putting it out.
Yes. Exactly. I don't recommend it, by the way, for anybody watching.
Yeah, like that. I think that's something too that we should really talk about. What is the vibration that you're putting it out at? Like, am I putting it out at you? You're doing this to me. This is happening to me. I want it because so now I want it differently, or as opposed to, what, I would love a really wonderful job in the school division. I would love a better opportunity. You know what I mean? Creating exactly what you desire and enjoying in the moment what you're up to. Right. So, I find it fascinating. This thing you said this, they don't value me and my job is not, my boss is not telling me thanks all the time. And I'm like, wait a minute, where did we come up with that idea? Where did we come up with the idea that our boss needs to create value in our lives? And I think that's quite common, is that we're like, why am I working for this company? They don't care about me. And they don't tell me how good I'm doing. And I'm not minimizing that, it's not important to value your staff, but where's the value in yourself?
Yeah.
That you need someone, you're so desperate for someone to tell you how good you are, that you're asking for someone else to do that for you. It's almost insane.
It is. Like, it's interesting. Like, there's the reflection there of, I wasn't valuing myself, because if I did, I wouldn't require that validation. And that for me has always been a thing. It's not so much anymore, but if I were to look back like 10 years, validation was a huge thing for me. I think too, though, if we were just to kind of hone in specifically on, well, two things that pop in my head, one being our jobs and the other being relationships, is that I think it's very, very commonplace for us to look for the appreciation or the validation from the job or from each other, right? And I know, like, to use the school division as an example, that's an environment, and in that school anyways, not necessarily everywhere, but I also have lots of teacher friends and teacher clients, and I know that this is a common thing, at least where we live. It's this, that analogy of overworked, right? The expectations are so high in terms of what you're expected to do. There's not enough support. There's not enough money to provide the support. And it's a compounding effect. And that's one of the things that I learned about manifestation. If we circle back to what you're talking about in terms of frequency, whether it's negative or positive, I feel like when we create something, we have to remember that it's a compounding effect. Just because I might sit down, let's say this morning, let's say I didn't, but let's say I sat down in gratitude and I wrote for 5 or 10 minutes, I'm so happy and grateful for these things. This is what I'm creating, or I write it as if it's already happened, whatever that is. And I feel really good in those 15 minutes. That's a great start to my day. Chances are, though, I'm not going to hold that vibration for the entire day. So if we have an experience of sitting down and holding that vibration for 15 minutes, but the rest of the 23 hours and 45 minutes is spent in negativity and complaining and feeling shitty, it's a compounding effect. When we try to create something, it's about where we are at all of the time. So it's really about taking that magnifying glass out, if you will, and looking at what's your baseline. First of all, where do you spend most of your time? Do you spend most of your time in positivity, negativity, in joy, in sadness, in despair, or whatever that is, right? And then looking at how you can start to incrementally shift that. It's not that you have to jump right to joy, but it's about overall, it's energy management. It's managing your vibration and your frequency on a day-to-day level. And it's the compounding effect that starts to put things into motion and momentum And how it turns out is going to be based on where you spend the majority of your time. At least that's how I believe it.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because how do you create in your life when, like you said, 23 hours are miserable, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can say, I want this or that, but really the point of life is 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of it. It's encompassing. It's not just the time I sit down and meditate and I feel this goodness, or it's not just the hour I'm in yoga.
Yeah.
It is how that expands into everything. So if we limit that to the time we're on our mat, or the time we're meditating, sitting on our meditation chair, if we limit our joy to that moment, there's also a disconnect there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, to use the job example, because I think it's a really tangible one for a lot of people, is if we are, and this is the experience I had, right? If you're going to work where most of us spend the majority of our time, right? And if you're approaching that from a place of negativity, or from a place of anger, from a place of resentment, bitterness, whatever, feeling stuck, whatever that is, that's your mode of operation. That's your mode of vibration in a way, right? So it's really hard to shift that scenario in your life when that's where you're sitting every day. So what I would suggest, for example, and see what you think as well, is if you're that person that's stuck in a job and it's not where you want to be and you want something different, it's how can you at the very least go to work every day feeling neutral, or finding something that you can feel grateful for, finding something that is going to, even if it means like you're looking at it and you're going, okay, I'm so happy and grateful to be making money today. Even if it's not the way I want to make it, I'm so happy and grateful that I have this job to put food on my table, to pay my bills, whatever it is, until something even better comes into my field. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's fantastic. And the thing that I find quite fascinating is when people say that, their relationship is bad, or their job is bad, and anything is bad. I always say, is it bad 100% of the time? Because it's not. I guarantee you're going to work, even if you had the worst job in the world, you're going to work and you're probably having a joke with your coworker, or you're having a good coffee with your, the girl that sits next to you, or the guy that sits next to you. Mm-hmm. There is always joy in everything. However, we choose to look at what's not good. And I bet you what's not good is probably minimal.
Yeah.
Even when I lost everything, that was not good. That was seriously not good. But my days were not filled with not good. Mm-hmm. My days were filled with lots of joy. I still went for walks. I still enjoyed nature. I still had experiences with friends. I still had beautiful things in my life.
Yeah.
That was a big thing, but a small thing, really.
Yeah.
The discomfort of that was very, very much minimal compared to how much joy I was really having. And I think if we look at our lives, I don't think anyone would say that our lives are suffering. I'm sure there's situations around the world, and I can't speak to those where people are in suffering, where there is, abuse and those sort of things. There are things that happen like that. But here in Canada, we are living in a lot of abundance and a lot of opportunity to have joy.
Yes.
So why not take advantage of that? Why not focus on what the joy is? Like you said, like keeping yourself in that space, because not all of it is miserable.
No.
For sure. Guaranteed.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting? And I always wonder where this comes from. Like, and for me, like, I kind of feel like, yes, it's past programming, and not from a place of like, oh, it's my parents' fault. Like, I don't mean that, right? It's that scenario that you don't know what you don't know, and you raise your kids the best way that you know how, based on what you do know. Right. But it makes me wonder, because the majority, I think if we just made like a general statement, the majority will often move to the glass is half empty versus the glass is half full. It's almost like if you complain, or if you're negative, or if you see things, in despair or bitterness or resentment, in some ways that's more accepted or expected than to be seeing things in a positive light and making the best of it in the glass half full.
Yeah, it's common. And it's common for us to say, like, for instance, if there was a while there, I was looking for a job. I was trying to find a job. And if I was like looking at each situation and trying to get too excited about the job, I would think to myself, don't get too excited, back off here. Don't get too excited. You might not get the job. And which I never did get the job. I finally got one, but it took me a while to get one. And so I find that kind of a bizarre mentality as well. Don't get too excited. Why not get excited about it?
Yeah.
You know, and then when you don't get it, get excited about the fact that you're not meant to get it. That job is not meant for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
they're
reverse.
They're not lining up with your energy. They're not lining up with who you are. You're not lining up with who they are. Not that they're bad and you're good. You just are not lining up energetically. That's it.
Yeah.
And
And isn't it interesting? Because I feel like a lot of conditioning, like for me anyways, from being a child, would tell me like, don't get too excited, don't get too loud, don't jump up and down, don't like put all your eggs in one basket, like don't do any of those things. And those are all high level emotions, right? Like high level vibrations that fucking feel really good as human beings. But we teach our kids to go, oh no, go like this.
Yeah.
Right. And then when we are in experiences like trying to get a job or whatever, like, oh no, don't get excited about it. Don't get excited about it. Right. It's like, what? Why the fuck not? Right. Well, then you might be disappointed. Well, I might be, that's part of it too, but would I rather get excited and then maybe experience disappointment, or would I rather just sit there and already in disappointment? I don't know.
Well, even the disappointment that we've taught each other that you're going to have if you don't get it comes from the idea that something is wrong with you, that you didn't add up to that job. You didn't add up to that guy that you wanted to date. You didn't add up to something and you was not enough. But really what I've experienced over and over, it is that law of attraction, that vibration. When you don't line up with someone, you're not meant to. The universe won't give you the most perfect man if you don't believe you deserve the perfect man. They won't give you the job if you don't believe you deserve the job. And if you are at a really good place and the job you're applying for, and they're not at a good place, the company's not at a good place, you're not going to line up with that company either. It works both ways.
Yeah. And I mean, if we use, to take it one step further too, if we use the job analogy, how many, and I'd love to hear this from the listeners, how many times have you perhaps taken a job that you didn't want just because it was offered to you? Right? Because it's like, oh my God, I got offered something, I better take it because I probably won't get anything better than that.
Or me on the dating site, that guy picked me. Oh, I guess I should go with that guy. He picked me.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
When was I going to pick?
Yeah. And it's like, well, if it chose me, then that must be as good as it's going to get. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's like, fuck no. Right.
Correct. Yes. I learned that the hard way. Absolutely. Yes. I agree.
Yeah. So can you share with us a story about something that you've manifested?
So obviously I lost everything. So money for me was not abundant. I didn't have, there's things would pop into my mind. Oh, I would like this, or I would like that. And I think, okay, right now I can't really manage that. So I can't afford that. So what I started to do is I started to write a list of the things that I was excited about to get into my life. And these are simple things. These are like, I wanted wireless earbuds.
Yeah.
So I wanted wireless earbuds. I wanted a road bike. I thought, okay, I'm going to start to work towards getting a road bike. I'm going to put that on my list. I wrote it down here. I wanted new runners because I love to run. And I was like, if I could just have a new pair of runners, that would be so awesome. Simple things. Wrote them in a book. And then suddenly those things just started to show up for me. I wasn't buying these things. They were coming to me. So someone gave me a pair of wireless headphones. They're like, I've got these extra ones. Do you want these? I'm like, really? You really want to give those to me? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I have extras. I don't need these. Here you go. Mm-hmm. The road bike, which is a really expensive item. My friend called me and said, you know what? I've got this road bike. Do you want it? I'm like, really? You want to give me that road bike? Like a road bike. I have a road bike now. New runners. I have a friend that has a running store and she's the same size as me. So she gets new runners all the time. So she's like, hey, do you need these runners? I've got a whole bag of them. Like it it was just wild how everything just started to show up. I didn't put any meditation into it. I didn't put any thought into it. I just, every time I thought of something that I desired, I wrote it in my book and I left it there. And I didn't try to manifest it. I didn't try to meditate on it. I just let it be in my book. And really what I was doing it for was like kind of prioritizing my money. What do I want to spend my money on, and how do I want to budget my money is where I was going. But I didn't expect them all to show up free like that.
Well, that's a beautiful experience, that things, as we're manifesting, it doesn't have to show up the way that we think, right? It doesn't mean that we're going to have to pay for it. Like, it could be a gift. It could come up. There's infinite possibilities, right? So it's holding the vision for what it is we desire, and holding the vision that it can come in all ways, shapes, and forms. Right?
It's fascinating, and I love it, and it's exciting, and it is exciting that it just showed up like that. And it reminds me over and over of how we are supported and guided, and how things, how people our guides are listening and paying attention to what we desire, and they're manifesting behind the scenes. And I'm always reminded of not to think so small, and not to think that we don't have this support. Because when we start to not count on that support or not use that support, we're missing out on a big part of who we are. We are this human that's here on this planet. And my understanding is that extension of us is our guides, and they are here to support us as well. We've been taught not to listen to that, and not to pay attention that you have these guides, or whatever is not seen around us. And yet I bet you every single person on this planet has an example of something coming to them or being supported by something unseen. I mean, you only have to go to YouTube or the internet to find stories of people, being in car crashes, and their angels and their guides coming to support them and help them out there. They have no misunderstanding about it. There's story and story after about this. And yet, as a planet, we want to continue to eliminate this extra support that's around us. And why? And I refuse to now. I want to recognize my guides. I want to recognize everything that is supporting me in this life, whether you're my best friend, or, whether you're Tracy, whoever you are that's supporting me, I want to recognize it.
Yeah, I love that. And if I could add to that, like, I also believe that sometimes the universe, how do I say, the universe knows better than we do. Maybe.
Way better.
Yeah. So like, I can use the example actually of, and a little bit different than you, but like the house that we're in right now. So it'll be 2 years that we moved here, come this summer. But before we moved here, we were in this, so there's 4 people in my family, 2 kids and my husband and I and a dog. And we lived in this 4-level split. And it was in this beautiful neighborhood in St. Albert, across the street from a park. But because it was a split, it was just very, very like compartmentalized. And so we got to the point when my kids were like 12 and 14-ish, or 11 and 13, whatever it is, we were just like busting out of this house. Like, we had too much stuff. There wasn't enough room. Kids' rooms were really small. And I'd already been thinking for years how much I wanted to move. And finally I got to the point, and I just decided, and this was the first part that was the difference. I was like, this is not fucking negotiable anymore. We're fucking moving. And for the first time, when I decided that, I started to act, well, not even act, I started to believe it's going to happen. So up until that point, I was always like, we got to move, but I never did anything. I never decluttered my house to prepare to move. I never looked for houses. I didn't put my house up for sale. There was no action to back up what I wanted, right? Which would be a little tip right there for everybody that's listening, is if you don't do anything to create momentum, sometimes nothing's going to happen, right? Sometimes we have to back it up with some human action. So this time I decided. So I started looking at houses, and I started creating a vision for what I wanted. And I envisioned a big open concept bungalow. I envisioned a white kitchen. I had like everything down to the detail, paint colors, everything. Like, I was getting super, super specific. But one of the phrases that I had learned, I believe this was in my SIT training, was, or something even better. So this time when I was manifesting, I started saying, okay, this is what I want. Or I'd sit into my vision, or I'd, visualize, imagine my house, whatever it was. And I would always say, or something even better. And so I started looking for houses, and this was still in the middle of the pandemic. So inventory was super low and houses were going like hotcakes. But what was bizarre is that I would look at all of these houses, and we were also up leveling in the value of our home as well. And I was shocked I was looking at these houses that were more money, but it was like they were less of a house. Like they needed work, or they needed a renovation, or they needed and part of my vision was move and ready. And so I had spent a couple months looking for houses and finding nothing. And finally I kind of just went, oh, like, okay, maybe this isn't the right time. And I went away to the mountains because I was teaching at a retreat. And so for the first time in probably 6 weeks, for 3 days, I didn't look at MLS. I didn't look for a house. I did nothing. And I got this message from my realtor saying, hey, like, have you looked at this house? And it'd been on the market for a while. But when I looked at the pictures, it wasn't a white kitchen. It wasn't gray walls. It wasn't what I was envisioning. It had a wood kitchen. And I was like, oh, like, it's really not what I want. And she was like, well, how about just come look at it? Like, she said, it takes you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the prince, I think is what she said. And when she said that, I was like, I'm done fucking kissing. Like, but I was like, okay, fine. So I go to look at this house when I get back from the mountains. And it's the first house ever that my kids were like, because they were on holidays, Mom, can we come? And I was like, you want to come look at this house? Like, cause they never wanted to come before. They're like, yeah, we want to come look at this house. I'm like, okay. So we come to look at this house. And first of all, I didn't realize the neighborhood that it was in. And so when I got into the neighborhood right away, I was excited because it's a neighborhood that I used to visit because my girlfriend lived just outside of it. And we used to walk into it all the time. And we used to joke all the time about how beautiful this neighborhood was. And we would at some point in our lives, we'd like to live here. And here I was in this neighborhood, and this house was there. And we walk into this house, and even though aesthetically there was not a single thing really that I'd put on my list, other than that it was completely open concept and that it was a bungalow, like the walls weren't the same color, the cupboards, like all those little tiny details. I walked in, and I knew as soon as I walked in, I was like, this is the house. It was just like this gut instinct. This is the house. And even though it was nothing like I had imagined, because it wasn't the modern type, sleek walls and all of the things, it was the house. And so I brought my husband back later that night, and he's like, you want this house? Like, really? Like, it doesn't have the white cupboards. It doesn't have like all these things. And I was like, no, but I could feel it. I just knew by the feeling. And what I realized later is it wasn't just the house, but it's actually the land that it's on and where it's located that makes it the house. But it was like nothing that I ever expected to come into our field. Right. And that's where that piece about and something even better, because it was way beyond what I had imagined. But if we don't open ourselves up to that, then sometimes we almost get ourselves stuck because we're so stuck in that one vision that then we don't open ourselves up to possibility.
I love that story. And
Yeah.
I think your house is white, isn't it? You must have painted the walls, did you?
Yeah, they're not like I wanted white cupboards and gray walls. I have like a very light gray wall, but the cupboards are wood, like wood color. Yeah.
Wow, that's a cool story. And I like that the manifestation started when you were a little girl or a young girl walking with your friend in that neighborhood, right? So yeah, the manifestation is all of us. It's the encompassing of all of who we are. We continue to bring forward who we are, even as a young girl, right?
Yeah.
My friend Marina has a story. She did a vision board. And on her vision board, she had this beautiful yellow home in the country, and she wanted to go visit this home. It was just something that she liked the look of. And she was in England, and suddenly she's at this home, visiting this home.
Cool.
And she's looking at her vision board, and she's like, wow, I put that exact yard on my vision board. And here I am standing at that home. So yeah, I wouldn't discount the opportunity to create in your mind what you do desire. I think that's really powerful. Yeah. And then line up that desire. And sometimes lining up with that desire doesn't mean that you're saying to yourself, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy. Sometimes it's just being worthy.
Mm-hmm.
You're just worthy of that new home. You just became worthy. You didn't have to tell yourself over and over and manifest every day, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy. You just knew you were worthy.
Yeah.
It was just part of who you were.
And I think that's part of the decision aspect, right? It was like that time I decided. I was like, there was no other option. This is what's happening. We're moving. End of story. I don't know when, I don't know how, but we are. Right. And that's one of the big things I think with manifestation too, is that it's amazing to stay connected to our sacred vision, but we often have to let go of the how, because that's what stops us when we get stuck in that, well, how am I going to do this? And how is this going to happen? Like, all we have to do is take maybe one step. Right. So it's maybe it's just looking for a new job, or maybe it's putting yourself out there on that dating site, or maybe it's looking for a new home. Right? Maybe it's just going to walk through show homes to start to see what it is that you would really love.
And when it doesn't work out, when each situation doesn't work, or if it doesn't, there's a reason. There's absolutely an important reason. And that reason is powerful to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Because that leads you to the next step and to the next one.
Yeah. It's just like breadcrumbs, right? One crumb after the other, just follow the yellow brick road.
Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely recognizing that life is joyful, and we are here because we are valuable, and we are here to experience joy. And most of our life and most of our days, even when you said you were in that grumpy period of your life, you were probably pretty joyful at a lot of points in that as well. You probably had good interactions with your colleagues and the kids, and there was lots of joy, but for some reason there was an awareness of what wasn't working was taking over.
Yeah. Absolutely. For sure. Absolutely. So we've got a few minutes left. Do you have like a daily or weekly type of manifestation, process or ritual or anything like that you'd like to share with everybody?
I try to do this every day. And what I do is at some point in the day, I try to do it first early on, but sometimes I forget. But really what I do is I call in my guides and I ask for their support. And I ask them to lead me the way with kindness and with ease, because I've learned lessons the hard way. And now I really want to learn the lessons a little softer. I want them to come at me in a way that are manageable, and so that I'm not in so much suffering. So that is my way of doing it. So I say, guides, I'm asking for you to come in and support me and bring me along this path, and show whatever's supposed to show up, I'm available to it. And I'll say, how can I serve? How can I serve today? Where would I best be put to serve? And that is always fascinating to me, where that shows up. It could be in the weirdest, craziest places where I'm shown that I need to serve here, I need to serve there. And that's kind of one of my mantras. How can I serve, and help guide me along the way?
I love that. My approach is a little bit different. So when I look at something that I'm trying to create, the first thing I will look at is using some clearing statements to clear and remove anything that might be standing in the way of what it is that I want to create. So I start with that. And often those are like, I used to write them out and I used to journal, but it's become such a part of my daily practice now that often it's more of an internal mind thing. So often I do it when I'm at spin class, if I'm on the bike, takes my mind off the spinning, I'll do my clearing statements, or I do it in the shower, or I do it when I'm driving. Like I literally, as soon as I have the realization that this might be a block, I'm following it up with those clearing statements. I'm always kind of trying to manage my energy, I guess you could say, from that perspective. And then I'm always doing universal asks as well, right after that. So asking the universe for what it is that I do want from the place of, or something even better, right? Or what else is possible. So those are definitely some daily things that I like to do. And I also often, like ever since I got my Healy too, I do have daily intentions and focuses that I put into my Healy, and I run frequencies for that as well. What, I don't know about you, but what I find is the more that I manage my energy and my vibration, the easier it is.
I don't know how people go through life with not out managing their energy, because I don't like difficulties. I don't like feeling bad. I like feeling good. That's what I like.
Yeah.
And, you talk about the healing, that could be another session for sure. I know Kim has one as well, right? And I've heard of them for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, my go-to is I get to the yoga mat. I go and I get on that yoga mat because I want to feel good.
Yes.
And I want to take that into everything I do.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel bad. I don't know about I don't think anyone on this planet does, but I think I'm really immune to it. So I do everything I can to find joy and make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I'm also like, I love rituals, like I do new moon clearings every month, but even with new moons, like new moon is a time of fresh start and a time of beginnings. And it's said that the best time to create new intentions for the month is at the new moon. But even that, I start with clearing work first. And that for the exact reason that we've been talking about throughout this entire session today, right? And so to me, I feel like if you're someone who is watching this and you've got a lot of tools on, how to visualize or how to manifest, but you're not actually managing your energy, to me, it's like, take a step back and actually start with managing your energy so that the compounding effect is going to start to begin to occur. I think that that's one of the big secrets that often isn't talked about enough, in my opinion.
I'm sure you experience this, Tracy, when clients come see you, they're like, oh my God, I feel amazing after, because they've been heard, they've been connected to, they're right on tune with their spirit. And they're like, how often should I come see you? And I'm like, come whenever you need to, like whenever you want to elevate your spirit or you're feeling down, come whenever. Like there's no saying you can't have this every day or every 2 months, or there's nothing that says that. Just whatever you need to do to manage you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And find the ways that work, right? Because how you manage, how I manage, they might not be the same, but it's finding the ones that are going to resonate and the ones that you're going to be able to embody. Right. Because if it feels like a chore, it's going to have the energy of being a chore, right? And if it feels like a chore, it's probably not something that's going to be easy for you to put into your daily practices.
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. Any final words on manifestation?
I just think it's a powerful awareness of who we are, and it's a powerful opportunity for us to live our best lives, and anything that takes us in that direction, why not? That's what we're meant to do. So manifesting our desires, there's nothing wrong with it. Asking for what you want, asking your guides to support you, definitely opportunities for us to be supported out there. So go for it. Enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I could add to that, I would just say to remember that you're manifesting every moment of every day, whether you realize it or not, whether you're intending to or not. So if you believe that to be true, if you know that to be true, then why not maximize that, right? Why not, the sky's the limit. Also knowing that reminds me of one quick thing too, is that we can only manifest what we have the capacity to hold. Right? So sometimes we might be sitting there saying, okay, I want to manifest $1 million. But if you don't have the capacity to hold that $1 million, if you can't hold that energy, it's going to be very hard to bring into your field. So sometimes it can be a lot easier to start with something smaller, like you said, right? You're like, I wanted the wireless earbuds, right? I wanted the running shoes. I wanted the bike, right? So sometimes that's the issue too, is if we haven't mastered managing our energy, sometimes that leap into that really big thing that you desire. I'm not saying it's never going to happen or it's not possible. It's just sometimes we have to start a little smaller.
Well, sometimes we got to face a lot too.
Yes. Yeah.
What is it that is, what is it? Like you said a really powerful thing. We're manifesting whether we believe it or not. Mm-hmm. Our thoughts and our opinions of self are creating our world.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, it's happening. And you can avoid it and you cannot face it. Why do I feel not worthy? I don't want to look. I don't want to see. Doesn't matter how much you do that. It's still going to come in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. So you might as well just create what you want then.
Yeah. And face those demons, face the darkness that haunts you, the things that come into your mindset, and the things that come forward and say to tell you that you're not enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you need support with that, Sheila and Kim and I are all here to support you. So you can feel free to reach out to us for that. And as we continue, please bring this conversation over onto our Facebook page with the replay link. You can comment below and let us know what your spiritual view on it is, because we're just sharing ours. It doesn't make it the right one or the only one. We, of course, would love to hear from you, and please like and subscribe our page, and we will be back on next Monday. Is next Monday Easter Monday? Or is it the Monday?
The Monday after following.
Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we'll be back Monday morning at 9:30, daylight savings mountain time. And thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.